All right. It is Friday, January 22nd, 2021. All right. So we're going to have some fun on this show today because 38 years ago to the day, you and the Washington Redskins, now the Washington football team, gave us probably the greatest memory in DC sports history on January 22nd, 1983, a Saturday, RFK Stadium, 12:30 with Pat Summerall and John Madden on the call. We're going to get into that day in history and bring in your teammate, the big guy, Joe Jacoby, and go back down memory lane and have you guys share some great stories and memories on this, just a great football memory.
It was Armageddon on the Anacostia.
Oh, I like that. Armageddon for Dallas.
Yeah. Well, we created the Armageddon. Like they went, ooh, what was that? What the hell was that? Oh, don't go in there.
What was that
Do not go. See that place that says RFK? Don't go in there.
Nuclear warning. You got the big guy.
Yeah, looking forward to talking to Joe. But right now, I got something. You know, we had J.P. Finley on at the beginning of the week, middle of the week, whatever, on Tuesday.
Of NBC Sports Washington.
Yeah. And so I went ahead and did, he did a quid pro quo. I went on his podcast. And I'm talking on his podcast, and it occurred to me that, and I don't think we've covered it here. If we have, then, we'll move on. But there's a changing of the guard going on in the NFL at the most important position. Think about that. I happened to go through last night, and some of the starters, they had everybody, because I couldn't think of everybody that played or didn't, in other words, all the starting quarterbacks this year.
Right.
And I went through 32 teams. But think of all these older quarterbacks that have been around. And I'm going to have to, I can name a lot of them, but instead off the top of my head, but I'm just going to go. Aaron Rodgers, he's getting up there. Tom Brady, Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers has already announced his retirement. Matt Ryan, he's been around. He's got to be a double-digit guy, and along with Matthew Stafford, guy in Detroit. Roethlisberger, he's way up there. Andy Dalton, although he never really, his name isn't considered in this list for the most part. He's never really played for Cincinnati all these years. Not a great place to be.
Different level of quarterback.
For recognition. And Alex Smith.
Yeah.
These guys. Now, look on the other side of the ledger. Patrick Mahomes.
Youngin.
Josh Allen.
Baby.
Deshaun Watson. Maybe 4 or 5 year guy, 5 year guy, 6 year.
Yep.
Kyler Murray.
Young.
Just starting out. Baker Mayfield. Justin Herbert. And Joe Burrow, and Daniel Jones with the Giants, and then you got TT.
So what are you saying? What are you saying? The league's in good hands?
Well, I'm just saying it's interesting that I don't know if you've ever noticed it before or seen it before, but the older guys that I mentioned, within the next 3 years at the most, those guys are going to be gone. That's 10 quarterbacks. 2, 4, 6, 8, 11 actually. They'll be gone. Some of them will be gone. After this year, realistically, I would say, Ryan and Stafford, Roethlisberger, they don't know what he's going to do. Brady, I assume he's coming back till they tell him, at gunpoint, you can't come in here. That's the only way you're keeping him out of there. And I think that the signs are there. But actually, who knows? He could be like George Blanda in a way. He didn't have to do, so far he hasn't had to do anything in the playoffs. Not really. Against Washington and against, last week against New Orleans. Wasn't anything. The defense was taking care of business for him.
No question.
So who knows? And, there's something to be said for a guy that is as accomplished as he is, the amount of and the way he carries himself and the spark that he gives to everybody else, just being around that guy. In a certain sort of way, he might be El Cid, the famous Spanish general that once he was dead, they propped him up on a horse, rode him around back and forth, and scared the hell out of the enemy. He was dead, wasn't going to do any fighting, but the enemy didn't know that. They went, ooh, El Cid, let's go. We got to get out of here. But yeah, a lot of those guys are going to be gone. Andy Dalton, what's he hanging on? Alex Smith. You're talking about guy Drew Brees. They're turned into hanger-ons, and people have got to step in management and go. But then again, you know what? It's entertainment business.
Branding.
And exactly. And the marquee value of a name.
Listen, you think New Orleans Saints, it's Drew Brees. You think Pittsburgh Steelers, it's Ben Roethlisberger. So unless a guy is willing to do what a Tom Brady did, what a Rivers just did, and he gave it a shot with Indianapolis because he was Mr. San Diego, right? And so that's the part of what's in the best interest of the football team from a listen, the dirty little secret is it's not all about on the field. It's about selling product and belief. And, even with the pandemic hitting here, for a lot of these guys, they're still a part of these organizations.
And this isn't a novel situation here. I mean, I can't. If you go back far enough, I mean, you'd get into the 50s. The same thing's been going on for years.
Joe Namath
was the first one, or one of the first ones. John Hadel, guy went to the University of Kansas. He was at San Diego, and then he went to the L.A. Rams. Johnny Unitas.
Johnny U.
Baltimore to San Diego. I mean,
sure.
So, and it's and that's the part that's kind of funny is where you get somebody that's a marquee, it's like, Dean Martin and Frank Sinatra. Or
Joe Montana.
They're going to be, Joe Montana, they're going to be headlining at so-and-so.
Right.
That brings people out, and that's
No
kind of in the back
question.
of their minds. But are you really preparing the team? And that's where it gets weird. I'm not going to say because that's the business model of the NFL. That's their business. But, as Dr. Ed used to tell me, it's not all truth and beauty. And I think that's what we got to face. But I thought that was kind of interesting that they've got – and then you got the middle-of-the-road guys, I guess, like Russell Wilson, Kirk Cousins, Derek Carr. He's been around, 5, 6, 7 years, something like that. And Ryan Tannehill, he was a first-round draft pick, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, I was down in Miami when he was the rage, and he was the made guy.
And he he flunked out of there.
And he did, but he's flourishing now. And it's just you never know with a lot of these guys. You don't. But we see the importance of the teams that are on the come, or all the guys, the young kids that you were talking about on the second ledger,
right,
versus some of the franchise, Pittsburgh, New Orleans, they lose their top guys.
Who's their next guy?
Yeah,
they've been there so long, that's a huge vacuum that is created immediately. And this is what, is what I wonder here with these, with what we see now. A guy like Tom Brady, if you get the franchise gets the right situation with the right guy at the right time, it's almost like Brady is living a charmed life. Where else? I mean, if you look at they had the defense, they had the wide receivers, they had a lot. They didn't have
the
quarterback.
They didn't have the guy.
And with him, a guy that's that knowledgeable and that experienced, he has taken that franchise to another level. We'll see when we'll get into that in a second. But so it makes me wonder, because I think I was saying this, when I was doing my J.P. Finley's podcast, I was saying, well, personally, I'm the guy that would, if I were king or I were the GM, I'm going to go get the young guy and develop him. But then it really depends on what kind of a team do you have. And you never know, is this team, local team, are they in that situation? I don't see their defense being that good yet to where, and add a piece or two and then bring in the quarterback that, one of these guys I just mentioned who's going to fall out from I don't know. Bring in a Ben Roethlisberger if something happens.
That's not the missing piece on this team.
That would make a big difference.
It is, but here's the problem, John, that I see it, and with Washington football, this is 21 years of ineptitude at the quarterback position. So you see how vital.
Well, it goes
how
back
important.
further than that.
Well, okay.
I mean,
granted,
once they won the last
going
Super
back
Bowl,
to Heath Schuler, back to Heath Schuler as I think the number 5 overall pick, or 3 or 5. So that point being is, that's why Dwayne Haskins was such a disaster and such a setback that this kid isn't going to be on the young ledger of workable, developable talent. We made a great choice.
Right,
so now you got this humongous hole there. If you got a young defense that you're building, you feel pretty good about where you're heading with that. You've got these other holes over here. This isn't a position where a senior quarterback's going to – I don't think this team's in that position that they're that elevated. We're on the cusp. We are on the cusp of winning a NFC championship with the things we have in place. But if we got a Cam Newton, a Ben Roethlisberger –
it's got to be the right guy.
A Deshaun Watson they're talking. Deshaun Watson is at a pivotal moment with what's going on with him and the Texans, and he has a no-trade clause. He has the old Riggo move where – where he's like,
but hopefully
you think you're going to get rid of me?
Well, I think he wants them to get rid of him.
Well, he's not. He wants more power and control, as a lot of these guys do.
And there's truth in that, because it depends on the quarterback or the system you get in. Ryan Tannehill, he's thriving here because there's not that much pressure on him. He's got, was it Derrick Henry? Is that his name?
Yep.
That's their guy that they depend on to get the job done. I go back to what we're talking about though, as far as the right guy at the right time with this franchise here in town, the Washington football team. I'm more inclined to believe what you're saying because the defense just hasn't arrived and gotten to where that's. No, those guys are real football. You go at if you score 10 points on the Washington football team, you have done. Or if you score 20 points, that's an amazing day because these guys don't.
They're a
give up.
lockdown defense.
Yeah, they're not that.
Although they're the best part of this football team right now. It's their strength of special teams, offense, defense. It's the best of what you got. It's not great. It has the potential.
But what you said is classic. I mean, you got to go all the way back to where, and I believe when they first started after Mark Rippon, they started, I guess it would have been Heath Schuler would have been, think of how many quarterbacks they've drafted and nobody's panned out. I mean, in the first round. I know you have Schuler, you have Jason Campbell, you have Patrick
Ramsey.
Ramsey. There's 3 right there, and then you got to throw that's in 24 first-round draft picks that never panned out.
And everything in between, from Donovan McNabb.
Yeah, exactly.
To RG3
Johnson.
Oh, we forgot RG3. Kind of forgot the number one.
It's almost impossible. How could you miss that many times at quarterback? So it means to me it's like the odds are on your side. Peel McClary, and everybody's heard this, not necessarily from Peel. He's the late Peel McClary. Even a blind sow picks up a few acorns. So eventually something good is going to happen. But you're right. I don't think they're in a position to go out and throw big money at would you catch a falling star before he tumbles to the ground, as opposed to getting it right and finding the next, young guy that you've got. I mean, some of these teams, Patrick Mahomes, Kansas City, they're going to be looking good for quite a few years, I'm guessing, if he ever gets over his.
They will be the next New England Patriots of what the Patriots accomplished relative to reloading and not rebuilding every year.
Yeah,
and it's going to be tough to duplicate what Belichick and Brady did from an overall quantitative success story. I mean, it's just remarkable.
It is, but always remember that from my perspective, they were blessed by the division that they played in. They could win their division every year, but obviously you got to have something once you get into the playoffs.
No question.
And I think something. Who's to say how that all shook out? But let's not get
Can't
into that.
Rewrite history. Can only play what's lined up in front of you.
Yeah. But what I want to say is, first of all, which game is first this week? Do you know?
It is the Green Bay Tampa.
Green Bay Tampa. Okay, that's a 3:00 game.
That is the 3:00 game.
That's
Lambeau Field.
That's an interesting matchup. And you know what? For people that buy into the quarterback matchups, as good as it gets here, you got the aging Tom Brady against the aging Aaron Rodgers. What's the difference in their age? About 5 years, 4 years?
I want to say Rodgers is 37.
And Brady's 42, 5 years.
I think Brady's 43.
He's 43.
He's 43.
6 years.
Rodgers is probably going to be your MVP
of
the league.
Oh, I thought they already announced that. I thought he was.
No, hasn't been announced.
It hadn't been announced. Yeah, more than likely. I would have to agree with that. But here's a game, this is a tricky game. Brady, normally you would look at this and go, well, whoever the quarterback in Tampa is, you go, well, that guy, he's a warm weather quarterback. They're going, there's a hell of, I don't care what they say, warm weather teams going into cold weather, big disadvantage, I think. They can say all they want about, it's all in your mind, it's all in your mind. Yeah, that's BS. You go there and it's real.
But Mr. Brady,
he's already been there, done that for 20 years?
He's going to have those balls deflated just the way he likes them in that cold weather.
They get to control their own. I don't know with him, though. I'm sure that they've got like an FBI agent follows him around, even when he goes to the bathroom.
There's a chip in the ball.
Exactly. They know exactly what's going on with it. I don't see what I've seen so far and it really gets down to Green Bay's defense, because I do think that the Packers are going to score, and the big thing is, can the Tampa Bay Bucks keep up with them?
Mm-hmm.
And there's where I'm going. Not sure that's going to happen. I like, and has the line changed at all?
Has not.
So what is it?
It's -3 in favor of Green Bay.
And I like that. I mean, if I were doing this, of course, remember, you go. I'm the reverse barometer here. I'm liking Green Bay, and you go ahead and give the points. But I am the reverse barometer. So read between the lines.
Don't bet the house.
No.
maybe
because I go either way.
Maybe a car payment.
I think I just did something unique, Todd. It's what they call in Vegas when you turn up 2 face cards. I think I got insurance because I'm going, use me as a reverse barometer, but I'm actually taking the green
right.
and the -3. I'm taking both ways.
There
That's
you go.
not fair.
There you go.
Okay, Kansas City. The first thing in Kansas City you got to look for is Andy Reid's mask, the mask that he wears. See, when I saw that the other day, and I asked you about this, and this seriously, you got to keep your eye on it. It just like I was transfixed. I couldn't get past it. Now I don't know if the
What was it that jumped out at you?
I thought that Andy Reid and his past before he ever became a coach was a Chippendale dancer, and I thought that he had grabbed one of his old G strings, dusted it off, and put it around his face. I mean, the only thing I'm thinking, that underneath his glasses and all that stuff, he had a penis nose, and he had it all tucked up in his G-string that he had for a mask.
For whatever reason, he is not figuring. Remember, he started out with the shield. He started the evolution of his pandemic. It was fogging up by the end of the game, and he couldn't see, and he needed like windshield wipers.
Right.
He was a meme all over the internet.
Yeah, and now he's got a mask that looks like it's full of junk.
Right, they're saying Andy Reid and it looks like he's wearing it wrong, and it kept growing by the game. It's like Andy Reid is mastered. He's got a small fry, a cheeseburger.
It was like
and some
like it
nuggets.
was full of junk. I'm telling you, that's all I could think of. Going, that is weird, Andy. Not a good look.
But
Not
he won. And he doesn't care.
But and I'm going to tell you something. Andy Reid does not care. That guy's solid. He gets it. He moved on down the line. Well, this is interesting. I take it Mahomes is still a question mark.
Mahomes. So they earlier in the week, this was Wednesday. They practiced. They originally listed him as a full participant. Then they backtracked and said he was limited. He is still in the concussion protocol. They are not saying. Apparently, there's 5 steps in the concussion protocol that you have to pass through that they are observing. Take this one to the bank, Vegas. Patrick Mahomes will be playing in Sunday's game.
Yeah. I mean,
that's the official scouting report on Mr. Mahomes' participation.
I can't see, like I said, the fact that they've gone, you don't know really, I mean, let's face it, we don't really know what's going on, and things happen. What I saw, I was shocked that it was, like you said, it was the nerve. There was something there.
Yes.
It wasn't. He shocked his spinal column. It was
a carotid nerve that you'll see videos online in the military.
Is that what it is, the carotid nerve?
That it's something.
There's an artery that's called the carotid artery.
Yeah, that's part of that. Where if you get dinged right in that one spot, it's basically a knockout blow. It shuts down everything temporarily.
Well, that's very well, because like I said, I did not think. But then again, who's to say? The only thing I could see were his helmet. There was no helmet to helmet, no shoulder. Nothing hit his head except his head hit the turf.
It was like a whiplash.
But I didn't think it was that hard. But so I agree with you. But I tell you what, this is where it gets weird. What team will show up from Buffalo? Buffalo's got a hell of a football team now.
They do.
And will they be able? And what you saw Cleveland do was pretty damn fascinating. Kansas City didn't have their A game last week, I don't think, and that's with Mahomes.
They got pushed all the way to the end.
In there, exactly, and that's an excellent football team. Now, do they shake that off, and all of a sudden, you turn around and go, "Whoa, what happened?" Those guys they got fangs. They didn't have fangs when you know what I'm saying? And well, Buffalo didn't look very good in their opener either, but they did it, and now
Indianapolis was pretty damn good.
Yes,
but I think Buffalo's defense is better than Kansas City's. I'm not sure Kansas City's defense is good for it.
Well, and here's the thing about with Buffalo that it seems to me that they have that they've got their defense has an unusual task. Back-to-back weekends. Last week they're playing a guy that is a motor scooter. In other words, Lamar Jackson, and they
bottled him up.
They gave his motor scooter flats, both of them. Both tires, not front.
So it gets back to air again. Brady deflate footballs. They deflate.
Yeah. So in other words,
Jackson.
now they got to play. Really, now they got to go back and play the pass because that's what Mahomes does. And these receivers they've got, and they've definitely got some electrifying receivers with their tight end and the wideout guy. They got a good running back. It's going to be interesting to see because it all gets down to Buffalo's defense. If they can, because I think like what you're saying. I think that Josh Allen is starting to get up on step, a term that they use in the boating industry, where the boat finally gets up and it's on top of the water and it starts gaining a lot of speed. I think this is an interesting game. And I guess, what is it? Kansas City minus
-3 as well.
-3.
And I think that's really the slight,
I like Buffalo.
The slight home field advantage for both of them, even in the fact that with pandemic, there's limited fans. I'm not sure about Green Bay if they're allowing people. In Kansas City, you'll have limited fans. But it's back to your normal home routine in the midst of a pandemic that comes into play.
Makes me wonder,
You like
though.
KC?
No, I like
You
Buffalo.
like Buffalo.
And here's the thing. I'm wondering, because I guarantee you they would be there, if they're allowing Buffalo fans to come to this game, if there's any tickets available for Buffalo fans. You would think there would be. I have no idea if they're doing this.
Only if somebody's selling them on the black market or on eBay or whatever, which is more than
They wouldn't
possible.
offer the team.
Well, I can't imagine a team would offer up for when you've only got.
But I thought
I've only got 16,000 limited capacity on it, which I believe is what they had.
But
last
don't you
game.
have to make tickets available to
Nah, I can't imagine in this scenario.
Well, sure you do. The players get tickets.
Okay, but that's normal. This isn't normal. If I only got 16,000, I don't have 80,000. You're not buying what I'm selling.
Yeah, I'm buying it, but I don't want to hear it. Okay, it's like, yeah, okay, I agree with you. You're bugging me.
The players aren't
vexing me.
the players aren't getting tickets in this scenario. I guarantee you.
You guarantee that
for the opposing team?
Yeah.
They ain't getting tickets.
Why wouldn't they get tickets?
Because it's a pandemic.
Then why are they letting people from Kansas City into the game?
Because they're only going to let their top dogs or whatever.
No, they had. Well, Kansas City in the opener, when this goes way back, they had what, like 5,000 or 6,000.
Hell, now I got a great homework assignment now. Now I got to go do my homework and report back to the class because now I'm going pretty deep in here. So I'm going to say it before I fall off the cliff here. Because steel traps usually got to go.
I'm going down the road when I leave here. I'm going to stop over in McLean. Actually, it's not McLean, but that's where the CIA is. And I'm going to go in there and apply for a job.
And then you'll have this in no time.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Riggo. Well, let's switch gears here. Let's go back to
the good old days.
I still believe the greatest day and the two greatest days, winning the Super Bowl in Pasadena. But I think the game leading into that 38 years ago, January 22nd, RFK Stadium, Washington, Dallas.
Okay, you vexed me. Now I'm going to vex you. Think about, though, you have to back up 10 years when that team beat the Cowboys to go to Pasadena and play the Miami Dolphins. That must have been a pretty good day for Washington fans. You weren't around then.
Yeah,
you can't
I was a wee
that.
lad. I was a wee lad, and I just don't believe it had the same impact.
Pizzazz?
Yeah, nah, I just don't, and I don't think anybody feels that way. For as awesome as that was, because the other thing, I remember that was a terrible Super Bowl. That was terrible.
And the game was so far out of hand. When I say out of hand, it was no contest whatsoever.
Yeah.
And yet the game ended up 14-7.
Yeah, it just
you never knew. Washington never had a chance.
Garo premium.
Yeah.
just a bad game. And the opposite of that was home field, RFK Stadium, the likes of we'll never see again.
True.
And we're going to bring in the big guy, your teammate, Joe Jacoby here. All right, Riggo, I'm going to take you back in time. January 22nd. Today, but 38 years ago, the Dallas Cowboys come to town to play the Washington Redskins for the NFC Championship. Once again, it was a Saturday. You guys had back-to-back Saturday games at 12:30 p.m.
Back to back.
Oh, really?
Detroit was a Saturday.
Interesting. Okay.
I'm 90% sure of
I
that.
believe you are correct.
Wow.
And you played in it. And we want to welcome in a very special guest, longtime friend. And once again, we always have to say this because we're both, and you in particular, very pissed off that one, Joe Jacoby is not in the Hall of Fame. A travesty, a mockery of a sham that is the Pro Football Hall of Fame that this gentleman is not in the hall. We welcome in the big guy, Jake, to the John Riggins Show.
Joe, all I can say is that run, those 4 games, Detroit, Minnesota, Dallas, Miami, you had more to do with that than I did. You and Grimey and Bosco and Donnie Warren, Freddie Dean. Really, that's where it was all at. So I just thought, unfortunately, my saying that doesn't get you into Canton, but someday, somehow, we certainly hope it happens because there's so many guys that have gone in ahead of you that I got to scratch my head on, but such is life. I hate to bring it up because it gets old, I'm sure. So, Joe, I know it was a huge game for me, the championship game at RFK, but, from your perspective and, working with Coach Bugle, what was that like during the week and leading up to the game?
Well, it was interesting with Bugle, as like every day is very interesting with Coach Bugle. But this was more. I mean, he was very intense, very nervous. We hadn't seen him the whole year of playing football smoking. Now he is smoking, but he is smoking so bad he's chain smoking. He's lighting one cigarette off the one that he's smoking for the next one. So he's nervous, and he's trying to calm us down because we were a young group. He wanted to make sure they didn't want to lose anybody. We're playing the Cowboys and all that. So we go through all the pregame, and now we're out there for the national anthem. So we're all standing close to each other. Russ and myself were close, Bostic and Biggs all in there. There's 4 or 5 of us. And so the national anthem plays, and it's over with.
Well, what was his instruction? What was his instructions prior to you guys leading up to?
Up to that we should walk away, not to initiate fights. If something stops, I can't afford to lose you. He walks out to the numbers, and he's yelling to the sideline, the Cowboys sideline. Ernie Stautner, who is the defensive line coach for the Cowboys at that time, and he's flipping him off and telling him we're shove it up there. So and he's telling us not to lose our cool. So that's before the game starts.
But notice, Joe, he did it before the game that way. During the game might have been a problem, but he's figuring, I can't get a yellow flag. The game hasn't started. So there's method to Buge's madness.
Yeah, you know what? The one perspective I've never heard about on this is, so Coach Gibbs, who, hey, don't Dexter, Rico, you guys keep your mouth shut. This is a hard-fought team. It doesn't matter who you're playing, right? No controversy. And here's his offense going out there. What was Gibbs thinking when Bugle goes and does his thing?
I'm sure Joe was thinking, Gibbs was thinking, I should have got a muzzle for Joe. I should have. I thought about it. When I saw him smoking those cigarettes, I said, Joe, come here. I'm going to stuff a sock in your mouth.
Where's my community guy? Where's my good community guy?
He didn't care. I think there was a little bit of Joe Gibbs going, yeah, Bugs, tell him. We'll give him the business.
Yeah.
Give him the business. Hell, that was our Joe Bugle, that's for sure. I was thinking, that whole week, obviously we got a taste of what was going to come from the fans. And to me, I don't know, I guess I must be all ham because it's always about the fans. I couldn't, playing in these games today, this year, nobody in the crowd. I mean, I'm going, really? What's the point here, guys? Let's go play pool or something and drink beer. But I remember, when we left that game with Minnesota and they're saying, we want Dallas. Well, guess what? Where they left off a week before, they started right back there before the game. So you had that bleacher that rolls around at old RFK. And it was literally, I don't know. I mean, to this day, I'm wondering why that thing didn't snap and people didn't get injured. But obviously they didn't. But the amount of emotion that was in RFK that day, I've never been associated with anything like that in my life. And for me, and this wouldn't have been necessarily true for you, Joe, you have to go back 3 years prior, 1979 in Dallas, where the core of our team, basically, the guys that were left over when Coach Gibbs came to Washington, were played in that game down there in 79 and lost in the last, I think, minute and a half, up by 13 points and managed to fritter away that lead, not only fritter, to end up losing. And what happened was, had we won that game, we would have been in the very position we were in on that day 38 years ago. We would have had home field advantage throughout the playoffs. So for me and the guys that were in that game, this was particularly poignant to have the Cowboys in your stadium for all the marbles, and I should have accented Cowboys a little more, because it was an old grudge. I mean, that's just the way it was. And they were, you got to give them credit. They were, at that time, one of the most successful franchises in professional sports. At least they had created the illusion, and there was more to it than just illusion. That was a good football team. If you could beat the Cowboys, and from a running back standpoint, and I would think from an offensive lineman standpoint, if you could handle their defense, you'd done a pretty good job that day, because if nothing else, they always had a good defense.
Well, yeah, they did. You know, from the Minnesota game at the end when they started that chant, and yeah, you're right with those bleachers and how they were rocking up and down. And then the carry when we come out on the field for warm-ups, I mean, it's like they never stopped. And the emotions were running high. And from just, the players, their emotions are high. But, I mean, our fans, I'm thankful they didn't get onto the field until the very end after the game was over, because they had blood in their eyes and they wanted to be a part of it.
Yeah, and I have to say, they talk about, the game of football has evolved, and it has, obviously, from what the game we played and just the rules alone. But I got to tell you, I think the fans have evolved. You go back in time, fans, they were a little more passionate, it would seem to me. Maybe not, I don't know, but and the Washington fans, like I said, for me, that was, I think, probably of everything I've ever done, the most exciting 3 hours I've ever been around, because of what was at stake. And literally, if you ever, rock stars do this for a living, Mick Jagger's been doing it for 50 years, I guess. I don't know how he's lasted, because once was enough for me. Literally, just the emotion that you felt in there, and it was like getting a hypodermic needle right straight in the vein with adrenaline. You were just, that feeling is hard to get away from, I think. In other words, it's something you want to revisit.
Well, along those lines, John, a couple other things to point out, and it's coming from a fan perspective, is so RFK was 57,000 and change. So small by today's standards. In the intimacy of that, you guys coming out of the dugouts, from the baseball field, and it's not one of the giant mass stadiums like we're all accustomed to yesterday or today. That's a different game. Do you realize, so this is Madden and Summerall on the call. You guys had the best record. Dallas was favored by 2. Vegas liked the Cowboys. And so from a respect in what Dallas meant on the national stage, right? That's America's team.
Yeah.
And you guys were actually the underdog.
Yeah. Well, that to speak to that is, it was so much so that when we ended up getting, I think I've said this before, but if you recall, Joe, when we got out, because everything was on a short notice because of the strike, when we got out to California, the players that had been wearing Adidas apparel, i.e. shoes, then they had a little package for everybody to wear while they were in not Pasadena, but down in where were we, in South Beach or something. Wasn't South Beach? I can't. Anyway, we were down around Huntington Beach is where we were. And I can't think of the name of the town. John Wayne Airport's down there. But they gave you these
Newport
jogging.
Beach?
Newport Beach. They gave you these jogging outfits. What do you think? What color do you think they were?
Blue and silver?
Yeah, blue and silver. So you tell me. Adidas is going, we'll go with the Cowboys on this. We'll take the 2. We'll give the 2, and we'll take the Cowboys.
So tell us the game plan. What was obviously had been demonstrated, and what the offensive game plan was for you guys with Bugle and with Gibbs.
Well, I didn't get into that stuff, Joe. You had, and really, I don't think you did either, other than the pass protection part of it. And, that was really the only thing. I mean, we hadn't done anything different. We weren't, I don't think. But by that time, the team had truly evolved. I mean, and you had 2 games. You had Detroit, you had Minnesota, and the die had pretty much been cast. The fact that I went and told Gibbs to give me the football, and next thing you know, you get 125 yards one game, 180 yards the next game, and I'm thinking you're carrying the ball 35 times, probably somewhere like that. I think we kind of knew what we were going to do. As far as we're going to try to run the football and then take the passes when they were there. I don't know. Is that your recollection, Joe? You must have had an interesting week, Joe, much more than me, because I slept through meetings, and Bugle was the kind of guy that he wouldn't have allowed that. So I'm curious to know what Bugle was telling you guys all week as we got ready for Dallas.
Well, yeah, unfortunately, we didn't get too much sleeping time in our meetings. Uh, but I know you had the prime position there on the other side there in the meeting room and stuff. You had the back of the wall,
Yep.
and then you had the window to look out. I think you were
Yes.
close to over on that
Well,
side of the room.
Joe, you have to remember the guy that sat by the window was a very important part of the meeting room because I had to pull the shade so it would get dark enough so you could see the film. And of course, that played into my hands.
Lights out.
It was like if the problem was though
Perfect and all
when the film would be over with, and they'd go, "Hey, raise the shade," because I'm back there with my shades are closed too.
Lights out for everybody.
But as far as the game plan, John, by then, there was no secrets of what we were going to do. A majority of our game plan was going to be running the football and then play off the play action and try to hit something downfield with Art and Charlie Brown. And that's how the things played out through that. But for us to win the football game, it had to be up front and it had to be you running the football and gaining yards, eating the clock, and scoring. And our defense, man, I can't think enough for our defense and what they did that game. And, with Dexter and what Darryl did, that's still 38 years ago. That play is still big. For us to get there.
Yeah, without jumping too far ahead. Without jumping too far ahead, Jake, because
I'm sorry, you got me going.
I know. So the Cowboys and Rafael Septien, they kick a 27-yard field goal in the first quarter, take the lead 3-0. Then you guys, Theismann completes a 19-yard touchdown pass to Charlie Brown. So you take us through that first drive because I don't have this. This game is so old that you cannot find the actual play-by-play of how many times in a particular series you ran.
Joe, I hope you have a recollection because it all runs together for me. I don't really recall other than the beginning and the ending of the game. That's about all. Basically, go ahead, Joe.
No, it's about the same for me. I remember our first offensive snap. It was you hitting the line of scrimmage. I can't remember it was 40 or 50 gut. And all I know is after that play was over and blown dead, we're now 2nd and 1. And we just moved the pile.
Well, I remember Tom Landry saying years later about that. He was kind of grousing a little bit. Not years later, but I think he was talking about, well, they didn't really run the ball on us. They got most of that yardage on the last play, on their last drive to kill, to basically end the game. And we can talk about that in a second. And there's a little bit of truth in that. But at that point, because I don't know how many carries I had, probably about 35, 36.
You had 36.
36.
36
and
for
it would have
140.
been, to a certain extent, he's right, because it wasn't like if you look at it from 36, I would say on that last drive of the game, we maybe gained 30, 40 yards. So that bumps up here. And I think what the total yards was 140 something.
Yeah, well, you were 36 for 140.
Okay, so if you take that out, let's just take 40 yards. You got, so you would have, well, you can't hardly do it. And then we had you had about 30 carries for 100 yards. Now, I don't know. To me, you can say, well, that's only 3.3 yards a carry. That's true. But for the most part, it was 3.3 yards every time. It wasn't like, that there was one big run in there.
Your longest was 17, and wasn't that on the last drive? You had one rush for 17 yards.
So I don't remember that, but it could have been. But it would, the point is that the team at that, we had become a running team, and and different in the way that we had been in the past. I think it was being every game that we played, it became more apparent that that's what we were, and I think it became more apparent to Coach Gibbs. I think that he started seeing, hey, you know what? This works for us. We pound it between the tackles, which I didn't really care to do, to be honest with you. I'd much rather, what do we have, 60, 70 outside? Basically, it's, and then you got the option of the cutback. On the 50 gut or whatever, you can bounce that. But I'd rather just, I'd rather have the crossover step and get going to the outside as opposed to having to take the lateral step. But either way, let's face it, it worked out pretty well, and that kind of was what I changed my style to the most part to fit what we were doing as far as the running style went, and everything went together. It worked out perfectly. And then, like you said, that last now this is the other part, and I think I'm going to let you tell it how the very last series that we were in, Joe Theismann would get his signals from the sidelines, and so we'd get in the huddle for that last series, and basically what could have been, we might have had to punt back to Dallas had we not got a first down, but I think we got 2 or 3. But Joe, you tell the story because you know it as well as I do, if not better.
Well, yeah, John, that last series, it came out, and the signals are coming into Joe from Don Bro and a bugle, and then there was 3 guys making the signals. One was live, the other 2 were dummies. I think all 3 were the dummies, but it still worked out.
The dummies were in the huddle.
But I know the first play that came in on that last series was supposed to go 60 outside. And Russ goes, no. And he told him, run 50 gut. He wanted to prove a point, him and Randy. So
Randy White.
They changes it to 50 gut. I think, like you said, you got 3 yards or 4 yards on that play. They get back in the huddle, then they play. He calls, and it was supposed to go outside, which you like to do more. Killing that, he said, hey, no, run it again. Ran the same play out of different formation. And we did that going down. Now we're in the huddle. Bostic goes, hey, play along with me. So we get up there. We're talking now to Randy, and Harvey said, hey,
Harvey Martin,
our coach staff loves you guys. Said, we've done so well on the previous 3 plays. They called the 4th. It's coming again right at you. And we did that for the next 5 plays. Just telling them, it's coming again, guys. And they couldn't stop it. And it was just, a lot of people goes, no, y'all didn't do that. No, we did do that. And it was something that we killed the clock. I think we killed the clock. I'm not 100% sure on that.
Yeah, the
ended the
game
game on
with us
that.
With the offense on the field. We got.
But it was 9 straight plays, John. 9 straight plays.
It was something.
Of 50.
Yeah, I mean, I don't recall the exact number, but now I look back on it, Joe, and I realize that Bosco and Grimey were playing with my money because if I don't get the yardage, they're going to blame me. Yeah. I'm the guy with the ball.
Yeah, what are you thinking when Grimm's audibling?
Yeah, I'm sitting there going, well, I knew I was going to get the ball one way or the other, so I'm thinking, Grimey, if you want to call 50 gut, you just call 50 gut. That's fine.
Now, wasn't there?
And he made Joe stand down. Shut up, Joe. I'm calling the play. I think Grimey for a second there, he was projecting back to when he was a high school quarterback. Not many people knew that.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
He liked that call.
So was there walk us through the famous bullseye play? That was that within the context of that series, and you guys needed yardage for a first down?
Yep. That was it. I think it was a third.
I think it was third. Wasn't it 3rd and 1, or it must have been 3rd and 1, 4th and 1?
Yeah, it was 3rd and 1.
And so we're in the huddle, and then Russ looks at Riggo. He goes, hit me right between the numbers.
What the
so
hell?
we
The
go
kid's
up.
coachable.
The cage goes through, ball snap. I'm next to it, and I hear that, oh! So laying there, we're getting off the ground. John's on top of Russ, face mask to face mask. And I can hear John go, bullseye.
I did. When I hit
That
Grimey,
was
it sounded like
he
a
hit it
whale
right
fart.
between the numbers.
Woo. I mean, it was a rush of air coming out of Grimey. I've never done. I mean, I'm sure I have in the past, but that was one thing I was always careful to do. I never run into your offensive lineman. You never hit him in the back. Here, Grimey's telling me, hit me between the numbers. I'm going.
Yeah, but he asked for it.
Yes. I'm going, okay. And so here we are at the bottom of it. Go figure how this would happen. Literally, our face masks are touching. I mean, you know, just a little bit closer, and we'd have looked like we were having a little thing going on down there. And I just looked him right in the eye, and I went, bullseye.
What was it? Were any of the Dallas defensive players or linemen now whooping at you or talking smack? Because are they pissed?
No, they were just getting.
They were just beat?
Yeah, I mean, by that time, and I forget, what was the final score? 31 something?
31-17.
31-17. So they really didn't. I mean, it was kind of ridiculous. I mean, like I said, I got to go back and say, well, there's a little bit of truth in what Tom Landry. They didn't exactly shut the running game down, but it did. We didn't run all over them at will either. You know, it was one of those types. But then again, that's kind of the way that offense worked.
Right.
That you knew you were going to run it so much, and you knew you were going to get. You know, you run the ball a couple times and you only get 3 yards. That's still you got 3rd and 4. That's a doable down, and that's kind of the way the odds. I think that's what the boys in Vegas would go. I like these odds.
Well, the balance of the team, Jake, with it's everything you guys have talked about and represented. It was all 3 phases of the game. Riggo running the ball 2 touchdowns, a Theismann TD pass to Charlie Brown, a defensive touchdown with the pressure that they applied, and Mosley getting it done.
Yeah. Yeah, it was. I will say this, too, for me. That game, and it's funny because I've already used that term once, but it was, I don't want to say it was anything but that, but the what I want to say, the anticipation and the excitement of the Super Bowl was not the same as that championship game against the Cowboys. It wasn't a letdown at all, but it wasn't the same intensity. It didn't rise to that level of passion in me anyway, because it was the Cowboys. You were at RFK, and you'd had that settle to score from 3 years prior of losing out in the playoffs to them down there from not even, getting a chance to get in the playoffs. You went from home field advantage to nothing, and that I took the next year off. I mean, there's a lot of things that went into that, but that certainly was one of them where I felt like all I wanted to do, because I was never going to get a chance to play in a Super Bowl. And actually, my goal had been accomplished because that's what the one thing I had in mind when I came into the NFL was, boy, it sure would be nice to play in a Super Bowl. I wasn't even worried about winning, losing. I mean, I just like to see what that's like, playing a game of that magnitude. Well, the game of magnitude for me was that Dallas game at RFK. It's in front of your home fans. I mean, it was different in Pasadena, but like I said, as far as passion goes, that game, I think it's still always, I look back on it and I think about it and I go, that game meant more to me than the game against, because at that point it was, hey, I'm Pasadena.
You play with house money.
I am good. Yeah, we've made it.
What did you guys, do you remember what you did after the game? I mean, because this town, listen, we're fortunate we've had the Washington Nationals finally winning a World Series. The Washington Caps got it done. But what this team meant at that particular time in this community was, that still hasn't been captured to that degree, not knocking these other franchises' success.
Correct.
But that was a special time in history. And I just know how we flooded the streets. We didn't know what to do. Like you say, just beating Dallas, the arch enemy. Did you guys hit Georgetown? Did you hit Clyde's at Tyson? Did you hit PJ Skidoo's? What did you guys do?
I don't recall. I think we went out in the parking lot 9, wasn't it, Joe? Is where the players parked. And I think, there's always people out there that had beer, and I'm sure we stayed out there and drank beer for a while. And then from there, I don't recall exactly whatever happened that night. I know that
I agree. I would say, Todd, all 3 of those, I would say all the above.
Yeah.
Remember what happened after we were done. I agree with Riggo that we were out in the parking lot.
But, here's the other thing, though, Joe. We didn't get goofy, now that I recall, because we had to fly to California the next day.
For the fans, I was just looking at this because there was no 2-week separation between the championships and the Super Bowl. So you guys had to get right back after it, so you couldn't get too jiggy with it.
Nope. Didn't want to get on a plane, with a big fat head. So, yeah, I think that we just had a few beers in the parking lot, got home because, I don't know what time we left. I would guess, time to fly. I don't remember. I kind of semi-remember. We probably landed out in California around mid-afternoon or something like that, early afternoon.
Yeah.
Like maybe somewhere between 1 and 2.
On Monday?
Yeah, the day after. Well, no,
Well,
it
you
been
played
on Sunday.
Saturday.
It would have been on Sunday.
You left that immediately.
I think we left the next day. I want to say we left the next day. Maybe not. I could be wrong about that. But
Wow.
There was something I thought that maybe it was Monday that we flew out there. It's possible. So then I don't know. But it's just, it's too far back in time. I do not recall.
38 years ago, guys. 38 years ago.
38 years.
One of the greatest sports memories in the history of this town.
Yeah, it is. I will say this. Of course, I think it had been since, 1940 that the Washington had won a world championship in 1940, if I'm not mistaken.
I believe that's correct.
So you're talking 43 years is how long it had been. And to Todd's point, at that time, because the Senators had been here, and actually the Senators were the first professional franchise I think that they had in Washington. And so, and they came close in the 20s when they first got here, but then they became, kind of the butt of jokes, basically.
Yeah, when it was really
kind
bad.
of what the football team has become in the last 20 years or so. But from the fans, the way the fans were back then, the football team was head and shoulders above any of the other franchises here. Baseball wasn't in town at the time, but you still had hockey and basketball. The Wizards, well, they were the Bullets, but the Bullets and the Capitals were completely irrelevant. So you only had this one. This was the main thing. And at that time, interestingly enough, and wouldn't it be great if they could do it today? But at least in this town, on Sunday afternoon, everything was kumbaya and simpatico when Washington played. Democrats and and Republicans, they were sharing the same whiskey bottle.
Race, creed, color,
It didn't
ethnicity,
matter.
sexuality.
It didn't matter.
It did not
It's
matter.
so strange how that when you want to talk about unification, that team unified this town.
100%. Jake, your final thoughts?
Well, it's always great to go down memory lane and stuff, but look at what transpired, 38 years ago, what happened, that game. I think it changed a lot of people's life, guys on the field, the fans in the stands, as far as what they did and all that. It changed this kid. I mean, there I am, 23 years old, and I wasn't drafted. The head coach thought I was a defensive lineman. Now I'm going to the Super Bowl. So
Two-way player.
what else could I say? I mean, I look back on that, and I'm very grateful for what I had and all that. I appreciate your guys' comments at the beginning about the Hall of Fame. But the Hall of Fame, they can't take away those 13 years. What those 13 years mean to me and other people that are close to me, my family and all that. So that's one thing they can't do. So, but I appreciate the comments. Good Lord willing, it will happen one day.
I was going to say, Joe, and the other thing that most people don't know about, but it changed a lot of lives for dogs, because a lot of them end up being called Riggo and Jake and Bosco and Grimy. I mean,
Dexter.
Dexter. There was all kinds of possibilities there. Anyway, Joe, thanks so much for joining us. Good to see you, as always. Not quite in person this time, but when you're in town the next time, let me know, and we will get together face to face, mano a mano.
Well, my pleasure.
All righty. Thank you, Joe. And I guess that wraps it up for us. Riggo out.